Hi friends, I'm Sarah. Welcome back to my channel, Sunset Bow Tarot. And you guys, I am way overdue for a declutter. So today I am just planning to go through some of the decks that are going to be leaving in my collection. I would recommend buckling in and getting something to drink because this is a pretty big declutter. Normally I do this twice a year, but I don't think I've done one of these since last fall. So I think I'm a bit overdue for actually decluttering my collection, which means that there are quite a few decks that are going to be making their way out. And some of them I feel like might be kind of a surprise. So anyway, so yeah, grab a drink and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the deal here is that I have not put these decks in any particular order whatsoever because I have enough to go through that just seemed like a huge undertaking. I already spent a whole bunch of time putting all of these decks in order because I always put decks in order before I sell them just to make sure all the cards are present and accounted for and check for any damage and just make sure that everything is, you know, back in sort of orderly fashion before I send a deck off to somebody else. So the first deck that I am going to be letting go of, this is the indie edition of the Arcana of Astrology. This is by Claire Goodchild of Black and the Moon. This is such a beautiful deck. My thing about this deck is that it recently came out in a mass market edition. I will be perfectly honest, I don't actually like the artwork of the mass market edition quite as much as I like the artwork of the indie edition. I think that the indie edition, it has like slightly softer colors. It's just not quite as it feels like the vibrancy was just like bumped up on everything in the mass market edition, and it's almost a little garish, I feel like, in comparison to the indie edition. That said, the mass market edition has more cards and it also comes with a really good guidebook, which is really the thing that has always held me back from really using this deck, is that, you know, it's about astrology, which I don't know very much about. It's beautiful, but it just came with this little like fold out, and so I didn't really have a good way to use it or like suggestions on how to use it, so it never ended up being very much used in my collection. But again, it's a beautiful deck. It has cards for all of the astrological signs. It has cards for all of the planets. It has cards for all of the moon phases. Here are all the moon phase cards. It has cards for some phenomena like eclipses, and then it has cards for all of the sort of like relevant asteroids and planetoids. So that is the Arcana of Astrology. Again, this is the indie edition. So I think like the mass market edition has cards for the houses in addition, like it has some additional stuff, and then it also comes with a really beautiful, well put together guidebook. So I went ahead and invested in the mass market edition, and I'm going to go ahead and let go of my indie edition. But like I said, I actually think that the artwork of this indie edition is nicer than the mass market edition. So for what that's worth, this is kind of a cool deck. And the indie edition is out of print. So if this is something that you're interested in, this is a good chance to get a hold of it. So one of the decks I'm going to be letting go of is the Witches of Legend Oracle. This is by Annabelle Lewis. This is the Kickstarter edition, so it came with a custom bag for the deck. It also came with a spread cloth, which is hanging in my closet, but I will include it when I sell this deck, the custom spread cloth, as well as a pin. All of these were extra Kickstarter goodies that came with the Kickstarter edition of the deck. So this deck is absolutely stunning. Like, the artwork of this is unbelievable. What I sort of realized is that this is the kind of deck where I am so in love with the artwork. I would hang the artwork on my wall, but I don't quite know how to fit this deck into my personal practice. So again, this is called Witches of Legend, and it basically is a combination of various goddesses that have sort of witch-like associations with them, along with like historical and legendary witches like Baba Yaga, you know, witches from folklore, as well as a few witches that are like, but like Maleficent and like the Sea Witch, you know, there's like even a few Disney witches in here. So it's kind of a wide assortment of different figures and archetypes. So anyway, I am going to be letting this one go. It is really beautiful, and again, I will include obviously deck comes with a guidebook, as well as the custom bag, the pin, and the reading cloth that goes along with it. All of that was part of the original Kickstarter package. So that is the Witches of Legend Oracle by Annabelle Lewis. Next up, we have the Oracle of Mystical Moments by Katrin Weltstein. I have had this deck for ages. This is one of the earliest Oracle decks I ever bought when I first started on TarotTube. I didn't actually get into Oracle until like very late in my whole kind of divination cartomantic journey. I've been reading tarot since 2003, and I just started getting into Oracle like around 2018 when I sort of discovered that it existed from the TarotTube world. So, and this is one of the earliest decks that I bought, and I have never actually had a very easy time reading with this deck, and I've never really read with it a lot as a result of that. I think the main reason that I kept this around was because I loved Katrin Weltstein's artwork so much, and I still do. I absolutely adore her artwork. But I've always found this deck just a little bit hard to read with. Like it's really one where I had to rely on the guidebook. Like there's some like definite intuitive messages you can get from the artwork, but it just was never a very like fluid reader for me. And then she came out with the Oracle of Mystical the Tarot of Mystical Moments, which I am obsessed with and I absolutely love. And her artwork in a tarot form is like, resonates with me so hard. I love that deck. I read with it all of the time. I use it to read for other people now. Like it's just really become actually kind of a workhorse for me. And as a result of that, I'm sort of like, well, I have the tarot now. I'm really connected to the tarot. I've never been super connected to the Oracle. And so even though I love her artwork, I have her artwork in another form now, and I'm kind of ready to let the Oracle deck go finally. So that is, again, the Oracle of Mystical Moments by Katrin Weltstein. Another deck I am going to be letting go of is the Dreamtime reading cards by Laura Bowen. I have both of her decks. I have both the Dreamtime reading cards and I have the Saltwater reading cards. I am not letting go of the Saltwater reading cards. I love those. I think they're phenomenal. And I use them and I love them. This deck, I think because I'm not Australian, I don't have as much of a connection to the various different sort of symbols in this deck. They just don't resonate with me in the same way that what's present in the Saltwater reading cards resonates with me. And so I sort of figured out again, like I don't need to be completist about a particular artist's work. If I really resonate with one of their decks and I don't resonate as much with the other one, then it's okay to only hang on to one of them. So I am going to be letting go of the Dreamtime reading cards, but again, these are incredible cards. It's a wonderful deck. It has a really good guidebook. And it's full of beautiful, beautiful, artwork. And, I think for, if you're somebody who is Australian or familiar with animals and symbols of Australia and of Aboriginal life in Australia, then, this is probably a really, really fantastic and wonderful deck to use. It just isn't one that quite fit with me or quite fit into my or really felt connected to. But the Saltwater reading cards I feel very connected to, and I really, really love those ones. So I am hanging on to those, but I will be letting go of the Dreamtime reading cards. Next up is the Forhaxa Tarot by MJ Cullinan, who is the same creator as the Grimalkin Tarot, the Crow Tarot. There's a Nocturnal Animals Tarot that I can't remember the name of that she did as well. Anyway, she's a really well-known deck creator and artist. This deck is incredibly cool. It's just not what I was hoping for when I bought it, which is entirely my own fault for not doing the research before I bought it. basically what I was looking for this deck, or hoping for this deck, was I was really interested in a deck that kind of delved deeply into Norse mythology. I am mostly Scandinavian by heritage, and Norse mythology is interesting to me. And from a few of just the early card images and stuff, and the fact that the title is Swedish, I just completely assumed that this was a Norse mythology deck. It is not. What it is a deck about a fairy realm. Basically, it's a fae realm, and the way that the guidebook is written is really cool. It basically takes you on a journey through this fae realm and talks through all of the different creatures that you meet. So it is really cool. The deck itself is beautiful. I mean, the artwork is absolutely gorgeous. I know that for a lot of people who do work with like fae energies, you know, they've been loving this deck. And it's fantastic, like in its artwork. And, you know, you can kind of see some of the cards that I saw early on that sort of made me conclude that this might be based on Norse mythology, because, like, you know, the tower sort of seems like it's depicting Ragnarok and stuff. But again, that's not what it's about. Totally my fault. But it is a beautiful deck, and just for somebody other than me, it wasn't really quite what I was looking for. But I think that, you know, a lot of people have been using and loving this one, and here's an opportunity to get your hands on a copy. So again, that is the Forhaxa Tarot by MJ Cullinan. So this is a very interesting deck. This is the Source Energy Art deck by Kathleen Deo. I don't know if this is available anymore at all. I got this off of Etsy. It is a very cool deck. I can't find her Etsy store anymore now. So for all I know, this deck is out of print. But it's a really, really cool deck. It's just as one that we just sort of never got off the ground, I guess. It's got really, really big cards, and it has all of this really kind of fantastic original artwork on it. Her artwork, I think, is really beautiful. And, you know, all of these cards were hand painted by her. And, you know, I think that she really did a lovely job creating the deck. Again, we just sort of like never kind of fully got off the ground, me and this deck. But I think part of the problem is that it's really, really big, but I wouldn't know how to trim it, because each of the, like, you can kind of see the borders aren't consistent. Like, each of the artworks is actually a different size. So there wasn't really a good way for me to actually trim this deck to make it really manageable for my hands. But it's a real, I mean, look at the artwork. It's beautiful. So, and again, I don't know if you can even get this anymore. She seems to have kind of disappeared off of Etsy. So I don't know if, like, it's sold out, or she just isn't selling on Etsy anymore, or what it is, but I kind of looked all over the internet and I couldn't find her or this deck anywhere. So anyway, again, this is the Source Energy Art deck. It's a very cool deck. It's got very beautiful artwork. You know, we just sort of never connected, but it's really cool. Next up is a copy of the Prisma Visions Tarot. This is my old copy of the Prisma Visions. This is the glossy edition copy of the Prisma Visions. This deck is used. I have read with this deck a fair amount, but I recently got the matte edition of the deck, and when I got the Cosmo Visions, I got the matte Prisma Visions, and so I don't really need my old glossy copy anymore. So this is the 4th edition. This is the one that comes with the Winged Boar card, which I really love. I love this card. The meaning of it is really great. You know, it has to do with, like, pigs flying and, like, unexpected things happening, you know. So so that's a fun extra card. But again, that card, I believe, is this is the 4th edition, and that card is unique to the 4th edition. But, you know, I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with the Prisma Visions at this point. It's a cool and beautiful deck. I have always really enjoyed reading with this one. I do find it very readable, and the artwork is very beautiful. And like I said, I got a new copy on different cardstock that I prefer, so I am letting go of my old copy. But again, this is a deck that has been read with, not a ton, you know, it's not like one of those decks I reach for all the time, but it's one that does resonate in certain circumstances and with certain people. Next up is the Tarot of the Abyss by Anna Turian. This is a deck that is fully a Three Girls Made Me Do It. And this is a really cool deck. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this deck whatsoever. It's just one of those decks where, you know, there are certain cards in it that I find really exciting and like a very new and cool perspective on the tarot meanings, but just not enough that it really like sort of fully grabbed me. And I feel like the deck that I would reach for instead of this is my black and white efflorescent tarot, which is a deck that I absolutely love. But this is a wonderful deck. It's really, really beautiful. It's a US Games deck, so it's on, you know, US Games cardstock, which I always find really nice. And Anatorian's art is beautiful and wonderful and very, very cool. And it just is, it's a lovely, lovely deck. And there are definitely cards in this deck that I particularly enjoy. This Hanged One deck, there are several cards in this deck that are very much sort of like putting you in the position of the figure in the deck, like the Hanged One would be an example of that. And there are just some like really, really cool takes on some of the tarot imagery that I think is wonderful. But you know, again, it's just not one that I loved enough to sort of like keep it in my collection, even though it is really beautiful and really, really well done. It just didn't grab me like quite enough. So one cool thing about this deck is that it does have alternate versions of the Three of Swords and the Ten of Swords. So if you are the kind of person who reads that and reads those cards in more of the like numerological fashion, like the less negative kind of like not so much Rider-Waite-Smith fashion, but more sort of numerologically, she did create alternate versions of those cards, which is kind of another nice thing if you are sort of not as interested in the, you know, really sort of dark, dismal take on those cards that you get in sort of classical Rider-Waite-Smith system. So anyway, that is, again, the Tarot of the Abyss by Anatorian. A great deck, a lovely deck, nothing wrong with it, just sort of didn't grab me the way that I was hoping. So here's a little deck I've had for ages. This is Tarot the Complete Kit. This is one of those running press tarot decks that they used to have at like the checkout at Barnes & Noble and stuff. Mine, like I said, I've had this for ages, but I've had the box in storage. The box is in great condition, actually. The deck itself, you know, it's definitely used, but I think it's still in perfectly fine condition. And this little deck, I'm pretty sure, is actually out of print. It's often referred to as the Tarot Nova, but that, I don't think it says that anywhere on the box. I'm not sure where that comes from, but this is a fun, quirky little deck. And like I said, I'm pretty sure that this is currently out of print, but you can get this pretty readily on eBay still and stuff like that for not very much money. So it's cute. It has kind of a fun folk arty vibe. I'm just letting it go because I haven't been reaching for it recently. It's a deck that when I want a small sort of travel deck, I haven't been grabbing for this one for the last couple of years. So I'm ready to let it go. But it's a really fun, sweet little deck with a fun vibe, and like I said, it's some cute kind of cheeky artwork. It really kind of goes its own way in terms of some of the cards, which I find interesting for a deck that was sold as like an introductory tarot kit, like you know, at the checkout at a bookstore. It's not as basic as you would expect for a deck that is being sold like that. So it's an interesting little deck, and it's very cute. It's got great backs. I love the backs on this deck. But yeah, I decided it was time for me to feel comfortable letting this one go. So let me just make real clear what's happening here. This is the Lion's Gateway Tarot. Now, I am not completely letting go of the Lion's Gateway Tarot. I love the Lion's Gateway Tarot. However, I have both the second and first edition copies of Lion's Gateway Tarot. This is the first edition, which, as you can see, is very, very large. The cards are very big, and they are gilded. It's a beautiful edition, but when she came out with the second edition of this deck, the cards are smaller and they are not gilded, and I prefer the backs on the second edition as well. So I was gonna hang on to my first edition copy just as sort of a collector's item, and then I was like, nah, you know what? This is a reading deck for me. This is a deck that I enjoy reading with. I don't really need to hang on to that first edition copy. Out of print first edition of the Lion's Gateway Tarot, I am keeping my ungilded, smaller second edition and letting go of this one just because I use the other one and I don't really use this one. Here's one that might be a real shock to people, because there was a time a couple of years ago when I probably would have called this one of my favorite oracle decks. So this is Connected and Free, the Alchemist Oracle. This is by Inner Hue. This is definitely out of print. I don't think you can get this one at all anymore. This is a very cool deck. It has all these chakra cards, which I never really use because I don't really work with chakra stuff. But the non-chakra cards in this deck are very, very cool. The artwork is really beautiful. And I always really enjoyed reading with this deck. I don't want to get too deep into why I'm letting this one go. Suffice it to say, I have some issues with some of the stuff that the creator has been doing and saying on social media, and I just don't have a good feeling from this deck anymore. So I am going to be letting this one go. I believe this is the second edition of the deck. It does come with a little book. One kind of annoying thing about the book is that the cards in the book are like in no particular order. They're not in alphabetical order. They're not numbered or anything like that. So if you draw a card and need to find it in the guidebook, it's a whole investigation to find it in the guidebook. But anyway, again, this one is out of print, hard to get, I believe, these days. And so yeah, I am going to be letting this one go. Next up, we have the Animal Kin Oracle by Sarah Wilder. This is a very cool deck. This is another Hay House deck. I believe this is an earlier edition of this deck. I believe it came out again later with a different box. This is a cool deck. It comes with a nice chunky guidebook. It has a lot of cards in it. So if you're looking for a very sort of wide-ranging animal oracle that has beautiful artwork, it has keywords, it has a bit of a system. Every single animal is associated with an element, and you can kind of see that there's like a little symbol up at the top indicating what element. So there's earth animals, you know, there's water animals, air animals, fire animals, and then as well, when you get to the end, there's some animals associated with spirit. So it's just, I mean, it's a cool deck. The artwork is beautiful. Like, each of the cards has this different, incredibly beautiful border on it that goes with the animal artwork. It has beautiful backs. I mean, it's a cool deck. The reason that I'm letting go of this one is, again, animal oracles, I don't know, I'm finding more and more that the only animal oracle I use is my Nature Portals tiles by Jamie Sawyer, and I don't like reach for other animal oracles really. So this one can depart my collection. So next up is another very cool oracle deck. This is the Literary Witches Oracle. This is a really neat deck. It's another deck where I don't feel like I necessarily needed this as a deck. I ended up buying the Literary Witches book, which has information about all of these women writers, and it has the same cool artwork in it. And I just realized that what I really wanted was the book and not the deck, because it wasn't a deck that I was finding myself having a very sort of easy time working with, or just, again, something where I wasn't entirely sure how I wanted to fit it into my practice. But this is such a cool deck. It has all of these different women writers. Each of the writers has a keyword on the card, and the keywords are really good to go along with each of the writers, in my personal opinion. And so it has these cards for the writers, and then it has a set of cards that are basically like, they're sort of like spell ingredients, basically. They're like, you know, items that a witch might use in witchcraft, or symbols that they might use. So so it has those in addition. But the thing that I really got out of this deck and really enjoyed it for was the information about the writers and the illustrations of the different writers. And the book gave me that in a way that was more like consumable for me, I guess. So I decided that I could let the deck go. Okay, next up is something that I am selling because this came into my possession as a result of a total brain fart moment. Basically what happened is when I was moving into my new like tarot space digs, I thought I lost my Marshmallow Marseille and I couldn't find it for ages and I did not know where it was. And I was totally freaking out because I love this little deck and it isn't always available for sale. You know, Wandering Oracle kind of like has it for sale sometimes, then other times it's like not available. And so I freaked out and I bought another version of it or bought another copy of it. And before my new copy had even arrived, I found the one that I thought I had lost. So anyway, I have an extra copy that hasn't even been opened just because I'm dumb and thought I'd lost something that I did not actually lose and panicked. So anyway, so it's a still wrapped, totally perfect, brand new Marshmallow Marseille. Yeah. Okay, this deck is kind of interesting. So this is called the Shakespeare Oracle. This is not actually an oracle deck. This is a tarot deck based on the works of Shakespeare. This is by Bronwyn Llewellyn with paintings by Cynthia Von Bueller. This deck is so cool, actually. It is out of print and it's kind of pricey when you see it on eBay. It is a super, super cool deck. I actually got it on eBay originally. And you can see that the guidebook is great. There's a ton of information in the guidebook. And let me just pull these cards out. They're even still in the little sleeves because I believe I got this from somebody who barely used it and then I barely used it. But so all of the majors are based on characters from Shakespeare, or, you know, we've got Shakespeare himself here as the magician. But so all of the majors are based on specific characters and well chosen, in my personal opinion, characters that are very good, you know, symbols of those particular cards. And then when you get into the minors, what you get is, for the numbered cards, you get quotes, which again, I think are very, very well chosen, quotes from Shakespeare. And then you have Shakespeare characters again for the courts. So it's a really cool, well put together deck. I know it seems kind of simple in terms of the minors potentially, but the quotes are really, really good, well chosen. If you love Shakespeare, this is a really cool deck. It's just not one that I ever like found myself reading with. I guess I sort of kept it as more of like a collector's item and just sort of never like made it part of my practice really. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, gosh, you know, I just don't really need this taking up space. It's really cool, and I'm sure there's somebody out there who would love to get their hands on a copy of this. Like I said, I mean, you can find this on eBay, but it is out of print, and it is honestly a really cool deck. So if you like Shakespeare, you're into literature, this is a cool deck. The one thing I will say is that the cardstock of this deck is not my favorite kind of cardstock. It's very sort of cardboardy. It's a little cereal boxy, I guess, you know, but it is really cool. And like I said, it is definitely a tarot, not an oracle, and it is well made, well designed by people who know stuff about Shakespeare and know stuff about tarot, and it is a good deck. So again, that is the Shakespeare Oracle by A. Bronwyn Llewellyn, paintings by Cynthia Von Bueller. All right, next up we have a copy of the Gaian Tarot by Joanna Powell Colbert. So this deck I got, I think, just because I have such a love affair with the Herb Crafters Tarot, and I love her artwork in the Herb Crafters Tarot. And I will say, this is an absolutely wonderful deck. It's got a really great guidebook, well put together. This is the, not the really great old Llewellyn edition. This is the current Schiffer edition, which, you know, it has bigger cards. They are gilded, and they have these big sort of borders on it. And I mean, yeah, this is a great deck. I don't know what it was. This deck, I was having a moment where I was feeling very sort of like, how do I describe this? I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and there's a very sort of like Pacific Northwest, like aging hippie feel, I feel like, to this deck in a way, which I say with all the love in the world. Like I think that's a wonderful thing. And like I said, I was sort of feeling that kind of piece of my personal history at the point that I bought this deck. And then I got it and realized, yeah, you know, I'm probably not going to read with this a lot. And again, it was one of those completist things. Just because I love the Herb Crafters Tarot and I love this creator's art doesn't mean that I need all of their decks. So, but it's a fantastic deck and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And this is a perfectly nice, basically brand new copy. So again, that is the Gaian Tarot by Joanna Powell Colbert. Next up is the full-size Dust to Onyx Tarot. The only reason I am selling this, I actually have the travel edition of the Dust to Onyx Tarot, which I am hanging on to. When I initially got this deck, I bought the large edition specifically because it came with a guidebook. And if there's a guidebook available, I want the version of the deck that comes with the guidebook. And that's why I hung on to it then, because, you know, I got this edition. The cards are like, they're so beautiful, but they're like quite a bit too big for me to work with very effectively. So I got this and I kind of almost immediately ordered the travel edition, but I hung on to the full-size edition specifically so that I could still have a copy of the guidebook. And then Courtney Alexander, the creator of this deck, came out with guidebooks that you could purchase separately, like paperback versions of the guidebook. So I got a guidebook to go with my travel edition, and I am able to let go of my full-size edition. This is an absolutely magnificent deck. The artwork is amazing. The guidebook is wonderful. The production quality is incredible. And like I said, I am only letting this go because I have the travel version, which I do actually use, and I don't need to hang on to the full-size edition just for the guidebook anymore. So I can let this go to somebody who maybe has bigger hands than me and can actually make good use of the full-size edition, and I'll hang on to my smaller one. So again, that is the full-size Dust to Onyx by Courtney Alexander. A beautiful, incredible deck that includes the guidebook, and it's just, this is an amazing, amazing deck. I highly, highly recommend it. Okay, next up, this one kind of makes me sad a little bit. Like, I honestly haven't been reaching for this deck enough to justify keeping it in my collection. This is an awesome deck. This is the Mystic Masters by Danny Mystic, the lovely Danny Mystic, who is here on TarotTube, obviously. I have this custom bag for it. This is the first edition of the deck, and this is a fantastic deck. I think Danny's artwork is amazing. What I'm realizing is, though, that in situations where, oh, I kept her business card in there too. It has a link to the guidebook, basically. So if you do buy this, you can get a copy of the PDF guidebook. But basically what I discovered is that in situations where I might reach for this deck, I reach for, different decks that also have more of a kind of a classical artwork kind of vibe to them. So like, I pretty much usually reach for like my Touchstone Tarot or the Golden Tarot, or something different rather than this one. So again, it's just, despite the fact that I love it and I think the artwork is incredible, and I think Danny did just such an amazing job creating this deck, I haven't been reaching for it enough. I know she does have a second edition of this deck available on her Etsy store, but again, this is a first edition, and I know she did make some changes in the second edition, so if you're looking for a first edition copy, definitely here is one that is available, and it will come obviously with the custom bag and everything. So this is a phenomenal deck, and again, I just have found myself, when I'm in the mood for this type of artwork, reaching for other decks that I've just had longer and have more of a really kind of like strong connection with, that I've nurtured over a long time. Again, that is the Mystic Masters Tarot by Danny Mystic. I feel like there's probably some people watching this who are going to be very, very shocked to see these decks in this video. So this is the Naked Heart Tarot. I have one copy of the second edition. This one is the second edition. So this is the edition that I've had for a long time and I've used a lot. Oh my gosh, this deck and I had an incredible relationship. There was a point in time where I would have said this is one of my favorite tarot decks, like absolutely one of my dearest, most nurturing, most beloved decks. And it is absolutely wonderful. Like I adore this deck. I've just realized that I haven't like reached for this one much at all in ages. Like ages. Like I don't know, a year and a half or more. I haven't like picked up this one. I just haven't felt the need to reach for it. I don't know. I feel like this is a deck that, this is one of those like, you know, a reason, a season, or a lifetime kinds of things. This is one of those like decks that was there for a season, and we had a wonderful relationship, and I used it all the time and loved it. And then, you know, I didn't need it anymore. It just wasn't, it wasn't what I needed in that moment of my life. And so what happened was, you know, I had this second edition copy of the deck. Again, I believe this is the second edition. And I was like, oh my gosh, why am I falling out of love with the Naked Heart Tarot? I haven't reached for it in ages. Maybe if I get a newer edition, you know, with some of the ways that the cards have been changed, it will like kind of spice up our relationship or something. I don't know. But I ended up buying a third edition, which has a few cards that are a little bit different, and it also has different titles for the courts. Specifically, like the second edition has the child, the youth, the mother, and the father for the courts, and then this third edition has the innocence, the movement, the heart, and the spirit for the courts. So, you know, gender associations and stuff were taken out of the courts for purposes of this newer edition, which I think is wonderful. Like I have, you know, it wasn't enough to kind of goad me into starting to use it again, but I think it's fantastic. But so I have 2 copies of the beautiful Naked Heart Tarot that I am ready to let go of, because I don't reach for this deck anymore. And like, what the heck? Like, I don't know what it is, but again, it's just one of those things that I've kind of made my peace with and said, you know, I don't think that this deck and I don't think this deck and I need each other anymore, I guess is how I would put it. But it is a really, really wonderful deck. And like I said, I have 2 copies. I have a second edition and I have a third edition. And I believe this deck is also still available. I know that Jillian is still making other decks, and you know, she is a wonderful creator and a wonderful human being. And yeah, this is truly a wonderful deck that I resonated with really hard at one point, and it was a really important part of my life and a part of my practice, and it just isn't anymore. And you know, I'm ready to let it go and say goodbye. So yeah, that is the Naked Heart Tarot. So again, I have two copies. The second edition has a little bit chunkier of a guidebook. It's a little bit of a taller box, and you can see compared to the third edition, which, like I said, has some changed cards and has a little bit thinner of a guidebook. So anyway, yeah, letting those ones go. I know I can barely believe it either, but it is the right time. So yeah. So there are also a couple of decks that I did have in my last declutter video, which honestly I think was almost a year ago, that never did actually sell. So I'll just bring those up again here. Again, I've just got a small Centennial Smith-Waite in a tin. I mean, this is a great little deck. It's a perfect little study deck or a perfect little travel deck. If you like the Centennial Smith-Waite deck, you know, it's the Centennial edition is just small, and it comes in a tin, and it's great. The only reason I am letting this one go is because I have a borderless Centennial, the full size, that I use as a study deck. And then if I want to use a travel deck and have like a Smith-Waite style travel deck, I have the bridge size Pam's Vintage Tarot, and that's the one that I almost always reach for traveling. So this one I just don't really use, and I figured I could just let it go. So the Angels and Ancestors Oracle is another deck that was in my last declutter and that didn't sell, and so I'm just putting it out there again if anybody's interested in purchasing this one. This is by Kyle Gray with artwork by Lily Moses. The artwork of this deck is really beautiful. There are just some aspects of this deck that I'm not super comfortable with. There are a few cards in this deck that just I don't like the combination of the artwork with the message. I don't think that it's like the right message to go along with that particular archetype. And again, you know, like I said, there are also just some other, you know, concerns that I have with the deck that, and I know other folks have some concerns with the deck, and it just isn't one that really resonates with me anymore. So I am going to be letting that one go. And then finally, this was also in my last declutter video. This is Crazy Sexy Love Notes by Chris Carr, artwork by Lori Portka. This is a fun little deck. This is a Hay House deck. I am not actually sure if this one is still in print. Because every time I look at Amazon or at the Hay House website, I don't see this one available anymore. So this might be out of print. But it's a cool little deck. It's got really sort of fun, whimsical artwork. There's a message on the back of each card. So this is really very much of an affirmation deck, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's a fun little deck. It's just not one that I really reach for. I have some other decks when I need more of an affirmation type of message that I would reach for instead of this one. But this is a fun one. I actually gave this deck to my sister at one point because, you know, it is the kind of deck that, like, for a person who isn't like necessarily super into cartomancy for like divination purposes, but could use this kind of affirmation style deck that has good messages on it, you know, it's a fun one. So and it's got fun artwork, and it's just got a fun, joyful kind of vibe to it. I think the title of it is kind of silly, honestly, because you know, it makes it sound like it's something that it's not. It makes it sound like sort of like a romance deck or something like that, but it's really like love notes to yourself is basically the message of this deck, and it is more of an affirmational style deck. So so it's really cute, and yeah, like I said, if anybody's interested, I think it might be out of print. So here's a way to get your hands on it. So as usual, there are going to be some freebies as part of this declutter. This is something that I almost always do because there are those decks where, you know, they're just like not really worth the price to ship for whatever reason. So the way that I always do this is if you order another deck from me, and you are the first person to claim one of these other decks that I am offering for free, I will throw it into the package for free. So again, the rule here is just order another deck from me and tell me if you want one of these freebies, and if you are the first person to claim it, I will include it in the package with the deck that you did purchase. So let's talk through some of the freebies. So the first one here, I've just got it in this little velvet bag. So this is the mass market edition of the Dark Goddess Tarot. So basically what happened here is I have the indie edition of this deck, and I actually went ahead and purchased the mass market edition just to get the book because I really like paper guidebooks. I know that you can read it on the app, and I have the app, and I've read this guidebook like cover to cover on the app, but I prefer paper guidebooks, you guys. I don't know what it is. Like any other kind of book, like I just read with my Kindle, and I'm like perfectly fine with ebooks, but with tarot guidebooks, I just like to be able to flip to the page that I need easily, which is kind of hard to do in a Kindle sometimes, so, or in an app. So I bought the mass market version of the deck so I could have the paper guidebook, but that leaves me with an extra version of the deck. And you know, I'm not like a huge fan of some of the design choices that they made in the mass market edition. And so you know, if this is a deck you've been interested in checking out, again, the guidebook is available on the app. So I will obviously be sending this copy of the deck without the guidebook, and also without the box, because there's no point in really, I think I threw the box away, because there's no point in really keeping the box if you're not going to keep both the deck and the book in it. It's one of those like great big boxes. But anyway, if you are interested in checking out the Dark Goddess Tarot and you're fine with reading the guidebook on the app, I have this copy of the deck, the mass market edition, that I am giving away for free. So another deck that I'm going to be giving away for free, and this is just honestly because it's a little bit damaged, although I don't know, you can barely see the damage. Basically what happened with this deck is that my cat spilled a cup of tea, and then the box sat in the tea for a little while, so you can see that there's just like a little water damage around the edge of the box. The cards are fine. Nothing is wrong with the cards, but I feel bad. I don't know, I just felt like I couldn't sell this like damaged, even though it's just the box is damaged. So this is another one that can be claimed for free if you do purchase another deck from me. This is the How to Be a Wildflower deck. This is by Katie Daisy. I think I saw this on Dawn Michelle's channel, and it's just a lovely little deck, but it's one of those decks that after I like played with it for a little while, I sort of like, I don't know, I guess I just kind of felt done with it. I drew cards from it and flipped through it and, you know, just like had it around for a while, and then I was sort of like, nah, you know, I don't know if I really need to hang on to this, despite the fact that the artwork of it is absolutely beautiful. It's a really cool deck, actually. So on these sides, I mean, and you know, her artwork is phenomenal and whimsical and really beautiful. Each side has like a little sort of affirmation or quote or, you know, something, you know, on the front side, and then every card also on the back has a different image on it, and they're all beautiful. So so again, it's a cool little deck. You know, it's just not one that I felt the need to sort of hang on to for very long. It's not very expensive on Amazon, and again, mine is a tiny little bit damaged, but just the box. So I am going to be making this a freebie. So next up, I have another example of a deck where I bought the mass market edition just to get the book, and now I don't need the mass market copy of the deck anymore. And again, this is a situation where the deck and the guidebook are available in full on an app. So if you want this copy of the deck, you can have the deck and the guidebook available to you via an app, and I am just giving away this mass market copy of the deck for free. So this is the Shadowscapes Tarot, obviously. I bought the Czech edition. Here's my Czech edition, to get the bigger artwork because I can't see this artwork on the mass market size cards. They're just too small for this incredibly intricate artwork. But I really, really wanted a paper guidebook, so I did buy a mass market copy of the deck to get the guidebook, and then obviously I have now this extra copy of the deck, so I can just give this away. So again, this is another freebie on my freebie list. Final freebie is this one, Crystals, the Stone deck, 78 crystals to energize your life. This is a really cool deck. I will fully admit this is a cool deck. But this deck to me, like, I've been trying not to really buy crystals recently, and so I thought, oh, you know, it would be cool to have a crystal deck. Maybe, you know, that's sort of a way that I can learn more about crystals or work more with crystals or whatever without actually buying crystals. And then I got the deck, and despite the fact that this deck is very, very cool, I should actually open this up and show you. It just, I don't know, it didn't prove to be something that kind of fit into my practice in any way. But so anyway, this deck is cool. It's got really beautiful full color photographs of the crystal on one side, and then on the other side it has information about that crystal. So in this case, black tourmaline, what it is, who needs it, where to put it, when to use it, and then there's like a little mantra or a little affirmation at the bottom for each of the cards. And the backs are actually really cool because the backs are all multicolored, sort of, you know, based on the color of that particular crystal. This is a cool deck. It's full of great information, but if I could have this information in a book, I would want it in a book form. It didn't turn out to be something that really worked for me like as a deck, or fit into my practice very well, or I just kind of never figured out how to fit it into my practice. So, and again, this is a very inexpensive deck on Amazon. So, you know, if you're interested in this one and you don't manage to get the freebie, like it's not that expensive, which is why I decided it wasn't really worth it to ship this one on its own, but I could throw it in for free if somebody ordered a different deck. So again, that is Crystals, the Stone deck. Yeah, nothing wrong with it. A very cool deck, very well put together. Just something that I didn't end up having a way to fit it into my practice. Okay, so now that we've gone through all of the decks, the way that this works is I will put down below in the description box a list of all of the decks along with the price that I will be selling these for, as well as information on how to get in touch with me. But I will also just say that right here, if you are interested in purchasing one of these decks, send me an email. My email is sunsetbow, all one word, @gmail.com. So again, that's sunsetbow, BOUGH, @gmail.com. And you can get in touch with me there, and we can talk about the decks. The prices that I have listed below will include tracked shipping in the United States. If you are outside of the United States, we'll have to talk about your location and figure out what the shipping rate, what the extra shipping would cost for outside of the US. But for within the US, all of the shipping costs are included in the price. And yeah, again, I do have that small set of decks that are going to be kind of freebies. decks. So again, if you are interested in the Dark Goddess Mass Market Edition, or Crystals the Stone deck, or the Shadowscapes Mass Market Edition, or the How to Be a Wildflower deck, these are the ones that are going out as freebies. So if you buy another deck from me and you want to have one of these included, just let me know. And if you are the first person to claim that deck, again, just one per person, then I will throw it in to the package for you. And again, the Shadowscapes and the Dark Goddess Tarot are both just the cards of the Mass Market Edition. I am keeping the guidebooks, but I do have the cards to give away. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this long video as we talk through a giant stack of decks that are going to be leaving my collection. It always feels really good to do a declutter and to find better homes for these decks that I haven't, been spending enough time with, and that I know somebody else will really love and enjoy having as part of their collection. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great one. Bye-bye.